video is going to be another tips video, and this is going to be a Vegas wedding tips video. So not only have I done sort of an experience tips video, but I've also done a video about picking photographers and videographers, so I'll link those down below. But this one is going to be more Vegas specific if you're looking, and probably more specific if you don't live in the United States, or if you don't live in Vegas and you're traveling to Vegas. So these aren't in any order, I've just got some notes written down, so I'm gonna just whiz them off and hopefully I don't forget anything. So the first one is, really, you can go as big or as small as you want in Vegas. If you've not seen our story, we got married, me and my husband, back in 2017. We had our ceremony at the Venus Gardens in Caesar's Palace. It was very lovely and beautiful. We went to a couple other locations for photography, which I'll get onto more as the video goes on. But again, I'll link our wedding videos if you want to see those and just, you know, get a better picture of what our wedding was like. For us, we only had 6 of us, so it was me, my husband and our parents. But you can go as big or as small. My parents 30 years ago got married, just the 2 of them, in a little chapel. You can have really extravagant big weddings, they cater for that there, whether you're having it somewhere on the strip or slightly out of town, at one of the resorts. Really, the world is your oyster when it comes to weddings in Vegas. It's like go big or go home. Or you can have, you know, really intimate, lovely, just a couple of people there, or just you and your partner. So that was my first thing that I wanted to say. Second one was you need to get a marriage license. So the Marriage License Bureau is downtown in Vegas. It's open every day from 8 to 12 a.m. so 8 till midnight every day, probably except for like major bank holidays, I would say. So bear that in mind if you're working around that. But we got ours a couple of days advance, so if there was any issues we could, you know, work them out. There weren't, but we just wanted to make sure we had them. It was a really simple process. You just go down, you fill out some forms, you've got a passport with you. I don't even think you don't even need like witnesses to sign them. They just give you your documents that you take with you when you get married, and the registrar then, you know, does the rest really. But that is a fairly simple process. When we went, there wasn't a queue. I don't know if there's any like peak times where there might be more people there, but for us when we went it was pretty quiet. My next tip, like I said, these aren't really in any order. I should have tried to make them more in order, but they're not. Vendors. Obviously, if you're like me, you're picking vendors overseas. There is no way of going to necessarily go and visit them. You may be able to visit them. I know my parents, before we got married, they went out maybe 6 months before for their anniversary, and they did a little bit of research for us, but not a whole lot, just specifically more hotels and restaurants. But I've got here, FaceTime your vendors if you can. You really want to get a feel for them. You want to get to know their personality, specifically photographers, videographers. I think that's a really important thing. Sometimes it's easier to get your point across rather than emails. Obviously there is a time delay as well, through the time change, so they're quite a few hours behind if you live in the UK. So just something to bear in mind. Obviously you're going to be waiting slightly longer, you're not going to get instant replies. I've got next one for the brides out there. Try and get your dress hung or put in a box. For me, my wedding shop where I got my dress from, they knew I was getting married overseas and they packaged it, they steamed it, then they put it in a box, and I was able to take that as my carry-on on the flight. Definitely, I'd say anything crucial to the wedding you want in your carry-on. Some things like you can get out there if worst comes to the worst. Men can usually rent a suit pretty easily. but you don't want to have to be renting a wedding dress that you don't like. So obviously wedding dress, wedding shoes, anything crucial to the wedding, any hair pieces. We took our wedding vows out with us. What else? We had our glass that we were going to break. What else? Just other little things for the day that I knew I didn't want to go in our main suitcase in case they got broken or in case they got lost. So yes, and also so when we got to the hotel, I just hung my dress up. It came also with a little cloth bag so I could keep it in the wardrobe. Darren wouldn't see it until the day. And again, if there were any wrinkles, they would sort of just drop out. So in Vegas, it's pretty common that you can get package deals with hotels for your wedding. We did one with Caesar's Palace, so included in ours was hotel stay for, I think it was 1 night. They usually do different packages as well. Ours, I think, came with 1 night, so we just had to book, you know, the rest of our time there separately. So we got the 1 night, we got obviously the venue. They did flowers, hair and makeup. What else? You could pick and choose whether you wanted their photographer or videographer. We had to pay a vendor's fee, I believe, for our photographer and videographer. I don't think it was that much. It was obviously wasn't ridiculous, otherwise we wouldn't have done it, would have just gone with theirs. We did have external photographers and videographers. We did also use their videographers because they live streamed it. That was really cool, and they sent us the video for that afterwards free of charge. So we've got like the whole ceremony as well as, you know, what our videographer shot. So that was really nice. I didn't have to coordinate loads of different vendors. It was fairly simple, and especially if you're not easy access, you can't just take a plane trip there or a drive there to meet vendors. It's nice to know that it's all being controlled, and there's not really a lot you have to think about. I've ask about live streaming. Obviously ours, it was included. I think probably quite a few hotels probably offer live streaming, and in the chapels as well, because they know a lot of people go there spur of the moment or just the two of them. Not everyone's family can come over, so I've know a couple of other people that have had theirs live streamed out there. Next thing, Vegas is hot, and it is pretty hot all year round. Obviously there are hotter months than others. We got married in September and it was still pretty warm. Just bear that in mind. Obviously venue, what you're wearing. We did get married outside. It was beautiful. Luckily where we got married it was fairly shaded, so it wasn't too hot. We weren't in the blazing sun throughout the ceremony. It wasn't uncomfortable. But again, something to bear in mind if you are going in the hotter months. And also, you know, your dress. Obviously pick whatever dress you want, but you will. I had a sort of midi 1950s style dress and I was still pretty hot in it. I had very light sort of 3/4 length lace sleeves, so even though my arms weren't really covered, it wasn't like strapless or anything. So just something to bear in mind. Obviously I'm not saying disregard your absolute perfect dress for the heat. If you want to suffer the heat because you want to wear your favourite dress, then do it, but just bear that in mind. Just keep hydrated. Try and stay in the cool as much as you can up until the last moment, and obviously have some snacks throughout the day. I had a couple of times during our photo sessions where I felt quite lightheaded and dizzy. I had to sit down, I had some Lucozade, I had some water, and I had a banana. Things that I knew wouldn't particularly spill and get a mess on me. You definitely want things that have crumbs that you can brush off rather than something that's going to spill. So yes, drink, eat. Bear in mind the heat. Bear in mind your party members. Obviously you can be inside somewhere in nice refreshing aircon up until the last minute, but they might be sat outside in the pews. We did have fans for our family that they could use while they were out there. They didn't have to use them too much, but just getting little nice paper fans that they could use. One thing I've got, don't get drunk the night before. It's really easy to go, especially when you've got a destination wedding, to like go out the night before, especially stags, get drunk and then feel crap the next day. Neither of us did it. It's not worth it. You do not want to be hungover on your wedding day, because your bride will hate you, and they will be able to tell if you're hungover or not. And you want to enjoy it, you want to remember it, you don't want to remember feeling crap on your wedding day. The next one I've got, again, goes to the sort of, you can have it as big or as small as you want, is time. There is no real sort of time limit that you need to start planning a wedding for Vegas. You can obviously go and elope, you can go and, you know, plan it for, you know, next week, and again sort of elope, but have some sort of planning. We obviously planned as much as we could far on ahead, you know, to get the date we wanted, to get the venue we wanted, and the vendors that we wanted. So really, depending on how big you're going, depends on how much planning and preparation you'll need for vendors, venue, thing like that. But like I said, you can just walk up, you can do a drive-in and get married. So yes. And also, if you are flying internationally, you need to book ahead of time for flights as well, so getting all that coordinated. One thing I would say is, obviously there was only a few of us for our meal at the restaurant. We told them that we were just booking a party of 6. We didn't tell them we were having a wedding, because we knew that they'd probably hike up the costs, and they did offer a separate room. This was at the Stratosphere, so it's the restaurant that like turns around at the top of the tower. I think they do have a separate room for parties, so if you've got a lot of you can book that out. But because there was only just the 6 of us, we just wanted a table. We didn't want them to, you know, fork up the price just because it was a wedding, so we just ordered it as a party of 6. And you know, that's something you could do if there's a small amount of you. On the other side of that, obviously, you know, saying that you're going for a wedding may give you perks. So obviously at the airport, check-in, mentioning you're going to get married, sometimes they might bump you up a class, they might give you extras. Sometimes it's just worth mentioning, even if nothing comes out of it. In Vegas, I probably would assume you'd get less of a chance of that, because, you know, they see weddings every day. You're not going to get so much of the spontaneous niceties, because it's a regular occurrence for them. But yeah, definitely, you know, mentioning maybe at the hotel, or even on like your honeymoon, and, you know, your flights, mentioning you've just got married or you're going to get married. They might do something nice for you. One thing I've got here is, don't worry too much about what your guests are going to do in the downtime. So it depends whether you're having it sort of in resort, you're having a big ceremony and a reception afterwards. If you are, obviously you have the typical reception things. For us, we had our wedding, we had our ceremony, we took our family photos, and then our family went off and me and Darren took some photos around Vegas. And we didn't really plan anything for them to do. They were like, we'll just go to a bar or something. There are tons of bars that they can go to, have a drink, socialise, even grab a snack if they want to. You know, there's the casinos, there's so much you can do if in that period of time. If you're not doing a specific reception and you're just doing, you know, a reservation at a restaurant in the evening, they can go back to their hotel, they can freshen up. Really, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Especially if like your family's quite easy going. Another point about vendors, I like to pick ones that had, this is sort of a general wedding tip anyway, and I mentioned it to my friend that's getting married next year. I said, you know, have a look at photographers, videographers that have shot in that location before and at your venue, because they will know the lighting, they will know if there's anything they need to overcome. They would have learned from previous weddings, they know sort of where the best locations and lighting may be, so that's something to take into account. I think both our photographers and videographers had filmed and photographed there, so they were pretty familiar with it. Obviously they were Vegas based, so they knew the area well. So it just helps, even if they've not obviously been to that specific venue. Getting local vendors can be good as well. You don't really have to pay for a travel fee for them if you can get someone in state, But if you do have a photographer or videographer that lives somewhere else in the country, you can usually talk to them about it. They'll fly in. Usually probably have to pay, I would have thought, a fee for them to, you know, cover their costs. The next tip I've got is just to think how much walking is involved. Depending on what you're doing, Vegas, the strip itself is quite long. Obviously there is a lot of walking between the hotels. Your reception may not be in the same area as you're having your actual ceremony. Just bear that in mind. You may be doing a lot of walking. I took a pair of flat white sandals that I bought especially, and after we'd done all our photos, I whipped off my heels, put on my flats, and we went to dinner. And I was so comfortable in that. So that was definitely a tip, is just bear in mind how much walking you're going to do. Are you going from a different hotel? Are you going to a different restaurant? How are you going to get there? Are you booking a taxi? Have you got a car organised? Have you got a limo? All that sort of thing. Are you just going to get an Uber? Transport again. But you can get a lot built in with your packages. You can ask, you know, hotel, asking your vendors if they can recommend other local vendors. We found that was good as well. And then the last thing I really want to touch on is there are so many good places to take photos in Vegas. Obviously your photographer, if they've photographed at your hotel before, they will know the best places, obviously where you've got married if you can. We were really lucky that we were the only wedding on that day, so we weren't rushed. We could take photos after our wedding where we had got married, and we didn't have to worry about another wedding party coming in. So there are some beautiful places around your hotel. I've seen people get married by like the pools, because some of them have gorgeous architecture like Caesar's Palace. I've seen people get married by the have their photos taken by the Bellagio fountains. We got photos taken by the Vegas sign. There is usually a wait for that. Obviously I think there's going to be quieter times than others. We went obviously sort of around, like, I want to say about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, so it was a little bit cooler. There is no shade out by the sign, so bear that in mind. Again, with the heat, you may have to queue. I think we queued maybe for like half an hour, I want to say. We didn't feel rushed taking our photos. We had them quite nicely, but again, something to bear in mind. We then went to a little white chapel where my parents got married, and I'd emailed that wedding official. I messaged the chapel before we went and was like, this is the deal, would it be possible to come and take some photos? This is where my parents got married. I just explained it. They were happy. We didn't have to pay a fee. We took some around the outside. Luckily there wasn't a wedding going on the inside. We could just go into the little chapel and recreate our parents' photos. But I mean, that's quite a unique experience. But if you are going somewhere else, you know, getting permission ahead of time. We booked in to have our photos taken at the Neon Boneyard Graveyard, not quite sure what its actual name is. You do have to pay a fee for that. You have to book out the there's 2 courtyards, and we had to book one of them out, so again that's an extra fee. But I love the photos from that. That was definitely worth doing. I love the video we got from there as well, because normally I don't think you're allowed to take videos there. You can usually take like your own photos, but and again, just if you are going different locations, working at the time, our photographers were great. They were really organised. They gave us, you know, a questionnaire of everything that we wanted photographed. They set out a time map for us, so we knew it was pretty organised, and really she stood in as sort of like a coordinator for us, which was great. So yeah, I think that's all my Vegas tips. If you've got any questions, leave them down below and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Obviously ours is quite specific to being international travellers travelling to Vegas for our wedding. There were only 6 of us. It was a fairly small wedding, so I'll try and answer any questions as best as I can. If you've got any other tips or comments, leave them down below to share with the community. And yeah, if you want to see any other wedding related videos or any just general tips, again, just leave me a comment down below and I'll try and get to them. And yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.